All right. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, we'll get started. First of all, great to see everybody today. Thank you for coming to the Cisco session. What we're going to try and do a little bit today is to really hit on three key concepts for you and try and give you a little bit of information on where we're going from a company perspective. So the first thing I'm going to do is talk to you a little bit about, as a whole, Cisco right now, what we're doing, what we're focused on, give you a little bit of color and context about that with a couple of pieces of slides. I know a lot of you probably know a lot about Cisco, especially if you're sitting in here now. The second thing I'm going to do is talk a little bit about future-proof workplaces. And the reason I'm going to do that is just kind of show you through workplaces that we have today, whether it be the office or wherever we are, how our technology is kind of integrating, how it's driving new outcomes and possibilities, and how we're doing some unique things in the way that we bring all that together for you. And then the last thing I'm going to try and do as part of that is focus on a little bit of Wi-Fi 7 and Cisco Spaces, talk to you a little bit about some of the innovation and transformation we're driving, and show you some of the cool things we're doing from a company perspective. All right, so let's get started. Oh, I might have hit too many times. So just to give you some context, how many of you in here know Cisco very well, work with them quite a bit? Quite a few. Okay, so we've been a security and networking company for over 40 years. Been doing that extremely well. We're continuing to double down on the security networking piece. But what you're seeing now is we're starting to innovate quite a bit more. With HyperFabric and HyperShield, we're driving a lot of investment in the security marketplace and the integration with networking. We also did one of the biggest acquisitions, or not one of, the biggest acquisition we've ever done with Splunk, to really bring in that observability capability. And so we're really driving a lot of success there. And the reason that we're doing all this is that we're moving from that company that was purely just security and networking to a company that you can see here. It's connecting people, places, and things. And we're doing that with a super high level of security integrated and protecting against cyber trust and other threats that you might see. So at a high level, that's what we're doing. That's really Cisco One as we talk about it. And just to give you a little bit of context on us, right? So we talk about the company that drives security and observability and collaboration and some other pieces mixed in there. But just take a look at some of these statistics when you look at it. So there are 31 million networking devices connected to our platform right now, with over 1 billion clients connecting each month. So tons and tons of traffic we have out there through the network, and the ability to bring in some of these capabilities and services to help out with that. 800 billion security events observed every day. And then we have the Talos networking capability. So we have a ton of visibility to that. And then lastly, we're a leader across networking, collaboration, security, and observability. So just at a high level, just wanted to kind of set the stage with some of the things that are going on. And the last piece I'll share with you around us, I thought it would be good for everybody to know, because everything is transforming. I know everybody hears about AI all the time. I know there's multiple sessions around AI. We too are also getting very heavily into AI in a variety of ways. So I wanted to share with you, these are really the three key outcomes that we drive across the digital platform. The first of those is AI-ready data centers. And obviously everybody knows with AI that it's doing all kinds of great things. It's everywhere, it's transforming, but requires a tremendous amount of GPUs. It requires a tremendous amount of speed and connectivity. And that starts with the data center. And so we really started to enable the data center so that you can transform and drive any AI workload that is available, right? So that's the first piece. The second piece, which I'm going to hone in on a little bit more, is the future-proof workplaces. And again, I'll use that as an example and a lens for us to look through a lot of the things that we're trying to drive from a capabilities and transformation perspective. But future-proof workplaces is really about modernizing everywhere people and technology work and serve their customers. That's really what it's about, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. And then the last piece is really digital resilience. Digital resilience, when we talk about the Splunk acquisition, we talk about Thousand Eyes and insurance and security. It's the ability to really protect that entire digital footprint. And so these three are the pillars that we're focusing on. And then as you can see, AI is embedded in all of this. It's embedded in our security, it's embedded in our networking, it's embedded in our Wi-Fi. So we're continuing to drive that. There's some sessions downstairs around AI defense that you'll see. There's a demo set up around spaces, which I'm going to talk a little bit around. So when you're down there, if you want to check out some of those, it'll also give you some visibility to what we're talking about. But what I wanted to do, as I mentioned, is dig in a little bit on workplaces, and then we can kind of go from there. It's trying to use that as a way to help you understand some of these technologies and what we're doing. So a workplace, as you can see, is anywhere people in technology work and serve customers. I just talked about that a moment ago. But it's really, before COVID and especially after COVID, it's the coffee shop, it's the airport, it's the manufacturing building, it's your device, it's anywhere that you work, right? And so when we talk about workplaces, it's not just where you work, but it's also how you work. Many times near the office now you have medical facilities or eye care facilities, depending on what you have. You're working from a variety of devices, telecommunication devices. So the workplace is really anywhere. And how you do it has become much, much more collaborative. I think all of us know that, right? And so the reason I want to use workplaces today is to really to show you how from a network and a security company, we've now moved into much more of a pervasive company around what we drive here. So when you look at the workplace today, it continues to need to evolve. The way that we're meeting customers' needs, the way that we're creating services and building things is much different than it was before. And so the workplace needs to change in a lot of different ways. And the workplace has also become much more of a driver of revenue and growth than it ever was before. Right? When you're collaborating with customers from a remote location or driving these services, it's become much more empowered. And so it's critical that we continue to evolve the workplace, not just to meet the needs of today, but also the future needs. And so as we talk about this and build into a future-proof workplace in a moment, just wanted to set the stage a little bit with that. The last piece I want to hit on anywhere with, oops, I forgot that it's the down button, not the up button. Sorry. Oh, I got it. So most workplaces really are not ready. Pretty much all of us, I'm sure, here were working before COVID. A lot of times there's a mismatch between the workforce and what they're doing in the workplace itself, because workplaces weren't set up to do work the way we do today. And so a lot of folks have not had the chance to modernize, to implement new capabilities and services. So there's oftentimes a mismatch there. There's a mismatch with the experiences. Think about the experience that your customers or anyone that you engage with demands now versus what there was before. Most people want super high res video. They don't want lagging, they don't want lagging sound quality, all these types of things. Most of that's gone away. So the expectation is a much, much higher. And then because of all these demands on the distributed work that people do, there's a greater need for sustainability and cost control and just awareness around it, because there's a lot more going on with the network, with the workplace than there ever was before. The second piece is really the influx of AI and IoT. I think most of us are very familiar with IoT from a perspective of cameras, right? That's probably the most common. You have things like robots, you have sensors in manufacturing places, you have all kinds of things connecting to the network. There's a greater need for visibility. There's a greater need for control for those devices than there ever was before in the workplace. The fast pace of innovation is a pretty obvious thing. We all know that. Things are changing very, very quickly. AI is driving a ton of that. And then the threat landscape from a security perspective is huge. But when you look at AI as well with this, right? AI is just driving so much transformation, so much energy that the workplace has to grow. Whether it was like we're talking about with the data center, with the capabilities for GPUs or switching or whatever it may be, AI is driving the need to really grow and transform very quickly. But when you look at the workplace today and what folks are doing, not everybody can obviously change the workplace all at once. Not everybody has the opportunity to go in and modernize everything they're doing, whether it's a budget or whether it's the time needed to do that. But it is really, really important to start thinking about, and this is what we're doing from a company perspective, looking much more at the outcomes that people want to deliver. What is that outcome going to look like? Where can we go with that outcome today? Where can we go with that outcome in 5 years? And what can we do? So that if you're doing something like you're upgrading your Wi-Fi, that's great. And you want to drive some more services, you want to drive location services or other things with that. Are you thinking about, okay, what eventually am I going to need to do from a switching perspective? What am I going to do from a camera perspective or an IoT perspective? It's really critical that you think about all those things, even if you can't do all of them now, because they're coming together more than they ever had with the network and the security and the collaboration pieces of things. And if you don't do that, you're going to have gaps, right? You're going to have gaps in security because you're going to drive a lot of innovation, you're going to do a lot of new things, but you're not going to have the capability to secure it or ensure it or drive the experience at the level that you really hope to. So let's talk a little bit more about future workplaces and what that means to us and what we're doing around it. And then I'm really going to tie into Wi-Fi 7 a little bit and share some more recent use cases and things that we're doing. So from a future-proof workplace perspective, these are the expectations around it. When you do this right, those amazing experiences become part of the norm. Offices become magnets. Lots of people are now going back to the office, and lots of companies need to drive the office as being a place people want to go, right? So you have to make that office a magnet. You can see technology is becoming integrated in the entire workplace throughout. You see some of that here when you're at Datavox on their site and what they're doing here. We've got some offices where we've done this collectively. Collaboration happens everywhere, whether it's from your phone, the traditional conference room, a remote device, whatever it may be. So all these things are really starting to drive the future-proof workplace. And as I mentioned before security was its own thing. Now security is really infused in everything that we're doing. So at the base of this, networking is really the core. Networking, collaboration, and security are what work together to drive these capabilities. But without the network, without good access, without good speed and capabilities, you can't not do any of this stuff. And so that's why we're working with these together. Why we're really putting them together to provide this greater solution around the workplace. But this also applies to a standard office. It applies to a lot of things. It's not just a workplace. So here's some of the outcomes that you're really looking to drive. And I'll share an example in a moment, and then I'll share a practical example after that as well. But the first thing is frictionless experiences. I think most of us now, when we go into a building, certainly when you go into a hotel, when you go to the airport, you expect to get connected to Wi-Fi pretty quickly, or at least get an alert, right? Like that's an expectation. Years ago, you couldn't even get on the Wi-Fi at an airport. So frictionless experiences has become an expectation, and that's an outcome that we drive through this. Productivity is a huge outcome that we drive through this, because as people have more frictionless experiences, things are moving faster, you have access to more capabilities, productivity goes up for your employees, productivity goes up for your customers in working with you. And then agility is really key to this, because if you go back a couple steps to when we're building this and identifying what outcomes we want and what we need to do, you build in that agility to do some of the things you need to do now, but as you go forward in the future. And then safety and security, whether that's physical safety, getting in and out of a building, badging, door locks, windows, those types of things, or whether that's the actual security on your devices, making sure that people are getting in, using apps and things on your network that they should be using or should not be using, making sure that's all safe. And then you can see the common theme here with sustainability and cost savings. Because there's a lot more involved with this, there's a lot more that you need to consider from a cost perspective across the board, because you have so many more inputs than you used to before. So I talked to you a little bit about how we do this, and then we'll get into some cool examples before Wi-Fi 7. So first of all, future-proof workplaces, secure branch, and secure networking is where we connect the users securely, any device to the network. That's the first piece of it. Smart building technology, which also Datavox obviously does a ton with, and we've got the spaces down there. Smart building technology is where you can take the devices, any device you have, and turn it into a sensor. Your phone can become a sensor. You can turn things into devices and collaboration into things that give you room occupancy, give you heating and temperature reads, all kinds of different things in your environment that can really drive more capabilities. And then the collaboration devices and software are really everywhere. If you think about it, I think for most of us, collaboration used to be just sitting in a corner at a desktop and waiting to get on connected. Now, whether it's FaceTime with your kids or all the different ways we do it, collaboration and the software are everywhere, and it really allows you to have an experience that's unparalleled to what we've had in the past. And then user protection is the last piece really around future workplaces. Again, you've got to have that capability for everyone to be connected and protected at the same time, on-site, off-site, remote, at the workplace, whatever it may be. So here's where we can switch and kind of talk about what this looks like in real time. And then I'll give you another example that kind of resonates for me. So take a regular doctor's office when you go in now. You expect secure Wi-Fi when you get in there, right? They're going to want you to have secure Wi-Fi and access when you get in there so you can check in, make sure your records are updated, if there's any information that might need to be exchanged. You have to have resilient bandwidth for the apps and the medical apps and the patient data that's being run in there. So you've got to have that as part of this when you look at it from a workplace perspective. Real-time location services. If you're going into the doctor now and you need an x-ray, or maybe you need a wheelchair or whatever it may be, the ability to know where those assets are and in real time get you engaged with those in a very quick fashion so that they can be more productive from a hospital perspective. And then again, you're going to see the common theme. Security is everywhere in what we do. And so really securely connecting to the network, making sure that your data is there. Obviously, you have things like HIPAA and other things that are involved in this case. But the other one I think about that may be a little bit more practical for you, if you have kids, right? Even my house, I look at it as a little bit of a workplace, right? My son and my daughter come home and they have all their friends come on. They all expect to be connected to the internet without any problem. My son will call me when I'm traveling and he'll tell me that the internet's too slow, right? Because he's gaming or whatever it may be. So that's a smaller version of it, but it's really the same needs that we have across the board, whether it would be the workplace or a standalone office of what we're doing. And so good example of how to show that. But as I mentioned, I want to talk about Wi-Fi 7, and most of you familiar with Wi-Fi 7 in the room? So what I would encourage you to do today is look at it beyond just Wi-Fi 7 being the next version of Wi-Fi in the tree, right? I mean, it is that, but it's actually a lot more than that. And so there's a few reasons, and we'll talk about. You've got the intelligence built in with AI. This allows you a much higher level of connectivity. It assures that you've optimized your space. So you've got that from an intelligence perspective from Wi-Fi. The security is built in to it, and it also takes advantage of our Talos network, right? So our threat detection capabilities are built in starting at Wi-Fi. And so as you know, whether it's the workplace or the office, most things start with the Wi-Fi. So having these things built in gives you the platform to build out from there. And then from an assurance perspective with Thousand Eyes, knowing that whatever experience you're creating is optimized at the highest level, it's running at the highest level, and that if it's not, you know where exactly to remediate and you can resolve those issues really quickly. So Wi-Fi 7 is really that, but it's also creating the opportunity for any device in your network to become a sensor. And so what I wanted to share with you is a little bit more about spaces. And I mentioned this was downstairs. Anybody check out the spaces section this morning? Okay, so it might be worth checking out because the way I would look at spaces is like this, is it's the way you can put a wrapper on whatever you're doing technology-wise to create an experience, to create the visual, the interaction, the way that you engage, whether it be through the collaboration devices or what have you. But take a look at some of these things. When you're running Wi-Fi 7 and you use spaces to drive these things, every device becomes a sensor. So look at the collab devices. So you can talk about room occupancy, like we're at right now. You can understand what the temperature and humidity is, the utilization. You look at some of the things like the switches, again, occupancy, a gateway for all the IoT that you have, the video, whether it's connectivity you may have on the network. You have the sensors and cameras. So again, air quality now, which is a big thing. You can test and tell people about the air quality. If you have a bunch of guests coming in, maybe some of them have some allergies or other things, you can do those types of things and have that awareness. Again, temp and humidity is a big one, right? How many times are we in an office where we're all sitting in the conference room and we're like, it's too hot, or too cold, right? Just having the ability to do that real time and having the visibility and control is huge. You look at the access points, the location capabilities, you have asset tags where you can track things. If you're in a manufacturing plant and you have lumber going around, you can have asset tags put on a pallet, understand exactly where something is, where it is in the warehouse, when it arrived. So there's a lot of different use cases for some of these things that you have. And you can see a few other things here, people count, environmental monitors. I actually have a house that I rent at the beach, and I use environmental monitors, sensors, to know if people are smoking in my house, right? So I put them in certain areas, and I use them as part of the network, right? That's a simple example, but there's so many capabilities that you can drive with spaces that I think, hopefully that gives you some color and context into when you look at what we're doing from a company perspective, the security, collaboration, the networking, how you can pull it all together and put a wrapper around it. And it's really the OS for SmartNet Spaces is right here. You have the indoor location capabilities, you have multi-sensor connect, you have AI maps that can be built into it, the occupancy, which we just talked about with the different devices in the Cisco spaces, you have Wi-Fi onboarding, and then you have apps and APIs. All of these are part of smart spaces. So it's really an open canvas to look at what you want to create in your office now today, the experience that you may want to create for customers that you interact with or work with, but Spaces gives you that ability to do things you've never been able to do with the network. Somebody pause there. Any questions so far? Any new insights from learning about this through the workplaces lens?
Wi-Fi 7 require on hardware?
I'll let Patrick.
No, you just deploy it to your current environment.
We're kind of going back to that original slide where you plan for it. If you knew you were putting Wi-Fi 7 in, you can put it in, but knowing you may want more sensor capability, devices or other things, then you have the platform where you can build into it and drive more capabilities.
Yeah. There is some capability with Wi-Fi 7 around to deploy it. You want a minimum of like 60 watts of power or UPoE, but we do have switches like the new 9300 switches. They can provide the universal PoE to 90 watts. So you can do not only the APs, but also power like the lights and other things in the environment. But as long as you got 60 watts of power on your current switching deployed.
Perfect. So I'll kind of tie this up for you in the same way that I started. Hopefully give you a little bit of time for lunch here today as well. You know, I started out, it was really around the Cisco One story. A lot of you in the room were familiar with Cisco and what we're doing, but I think it's really important to understand that as people have grown and more of these capabilities are there, people want more of a platform approach. They want more unified approach to what they're doing, more management and control. And so the Cisco One story is really that. It's not just networking and security by itself anymore. It's how are all these people and apps and all these things, all the data coming into what you do, and how do you see that? How do you have that visibility? How do you protect that from a security perspective? So that's my update today on what we're doing from a Cisco perspective, and a little bit about what workplaces are going and Cisco One. But happy to take some questions. We've got a couple folks. Obviously I'm happy to answer any questions, but I've got my technical guy, Patrick, in the back. So happy to chat.